Hi, my name is Steve Rahi. I am a Premier Field Engineer specializing in management technologies. Today's discussion will be a quick overview of leveraging Visual Studio and Install Shield together to build MSI packages that can then be used to deploy to systems that support the MDM protocol, managing through the MDM protocol, specifically Windows systems that support that technology. So here's a bit of the agenda. Gonna just again focus on the scope. This is really not talking about leveraging ConfigMgr and Intune standalone to do those deployments. Not going to really talk about those. We'll quickly show in the console, but really um, more about building. In fact, I probably just covered this topic. Want to talk about why custom MSIs are important, and then spend the bulk of our time walking through the tools to build custom MSIs and see what options are there. Okay, so for presentation scope, again, this is really focusing on building the MSI, not deploying it. So I'm not going to go through and show how to deploy through Intune and ConfigMgr, but just to build it, right? The focus also is on Visual Studio and Install Shield in combination to be able to build these particular pieces. So in ConfigMgr, in standalone Intune, we do have support for deploying MSIs. Right? We've always had the ability to deploy MSIs to PCs through ConfigMgr, through Intune, but specifically, we now have the ability to deploy MSIs using the MDM protocol, which is very important, offers some interesting capabilities, right? So I want to go through it for this reason. So let me show you the pieces in ConfigMgr and Intune standalone first. That is where you go to deploy it. So let me pull in the Intune standalone console, and if we go to apps here, then we can go and add a new app, and this is about as far as I'm going to take this. So go ahead and add app. Okay, so that's going to pull up the software publisher that we need to initiate. Pause the video while that comes up. All right, so log into it. And it will take me through a few options that I need to get the process started here, hopefully. There we go. So select the software installer type. Notice that we have Windows installer, which is MSI.EXEs, but then we have Windows installer through MDM. That is required to be able to do things like run scripts and so on, PowerShell scripts, Java scripts, VB scripts, whatever. Being able to wrap it in MSI gives you the ability to run those kind of things, even though technically there's no support for it. Well, not even technically. There's no direct way to run those things. You have to do it through MSI, right? So this is where you would launch that. That's as far as I'm going to take it in the Intune console. So I'll just go ahead and get rid of this. Now, specifically back on the ConfigMgr side, if I pull in the ConfigMgr console, and under Application Management, I can go create an application, and just on the list, here's Windows Installer. Notice Windows Installer through MDM, right? So that's what we're talking about, and that's why we're talking about it, is in order to be able to deploy something using Windows Installer for MDM, we need to be able to build MSI packages, right? So flexibility, why custom MSIs? Flexibility, the ability to build scripts and executables and PowerShell and other things, lots of things into your deployment process. You could build something very simple. All it does is launch the executable script of your choice, whatever. You could build something more complex like MSIs are known to do, right? So that's the reason we get into this, right? So the rest of the time, we're actually going to go build some custom MSIs, actually look at the process of building custom MSIs. So what I have here is a demo machine with Visual Studio, and I'm using Visual Studio 2015 in this case, and I'm using the default installation, so nothing special about it. So once I get Visual Studio launched, and obviously I have mine installed, there will be a few steps if you haven't got it installed yet that you'll have to let it set up and things of that nature. But once you have it installed, I'm ready to build a new MSI project. Just a matter of going to File, New, Project, and then I will open up, because I've already been here, to Setup and Deployment. So this is under Other Project Type, Setup and Deployment, and notice Install Shield Limited Edition Product. or project, right? So I already have this installed. Okay. So whenever you first install Visual Studio, you will be able to go here and you'll be able to see setup and deployment. And here you will have an option to enable Install Shield, and then it'll walk you through a process to go download the bits from Install Shield, have a registration code, things of that nature. And once you walk through that process, you will be able to come back into Visual Studio, have to restart it, and get back to this section where you can go initialize an Install Shield project. Right, so I'll just call this video demo. Okay, now the name of your project is really important. You can always go back and rename it, yes, but it's just more convenient to go ahead and start off with the right name here. Whether you want to create directory for solution, add to source control, whatever, I'll just take the defaults here and hit OK. So this is going to launch me into Visual Studio. The project is going to be created, and what I see in my window now is what's called the Project Assistant. So the project assistant is a wizard. Wizards are good. Wizards bring forward information and things that are pretty good to know and easy to configure and so on. But wizards also hide some things or bury some things beyond the main page. So I use the wizard only for a couple of things now that I've gotten familiar with it, but you can go through it, and we will. So, for example, I can go through application information. Here I will specify the name of your company, what the name of the application will be, what version of the application is here, the URL. If you have a specific icon you want to display, you can pull that in here, right? General information links to another portion. Notice general information is here. It's also over here in the Solution Explorer. Right, little preview. I'm to the point of familiarity with this now that the Solution Explorer is actually the preferred way, that at least to me, for building MSIs. But you can access it from here too. So general information, update notifications. So you see update notifications over here as well, right? So the wizard pulls it together. In the installation requirements, this asks you, are there any particular operating system limitations on here? The answer should be, well, it could be no, right? The installer that you're going to create, the MSI that you're going to create, probably could be used on most any operating system. Through ConfigMgr and Intune, the target operating systems would be Windows 8, Windows 10, right? Windows 8.1 or later, Windows 10. Okay. So your choice here, any particular requirements that the application needs to adhere to in terms of having software installed, that kind of thing, you can go ahead and tick here and see it. So if I click yes, I can scroll through the list, right, and select it, but I don't need to. Also, here's a requirements tab, so mapping over here to the installation requirements, specify application data, let's see. All of that is over here. Setup applications, requirements, right? So they map over here to the different tabs and so on, right? So I'm not going to change anything here. I'm just going to leave the default. You can, if you need to, for your environment for whatever reason. Application files. So this is where you might want to add in specific files. So the MSI itself does not have to have any files as a part of it. Sophisticated MSIs will. You may want to, in your environment, include a script, include an executable, include something of that nature. You can just simply use the MSI to initiate an application that's already on the target system if you want to, such as PowerShell, right? You'll see an example in a minute where I run an entire PowerShell script, which is very tiny, just from the command prompt. Okay, inside the MSI, there's no files required. You can add them. So if you decide to add them, notice this is the program files folder. There are several folders that are pre-configured in the MSI engine, and if you add them and store files there, you can build out quite a sophisticated scenario of where files go and so on. Right here is the install directory by default. So if you want to add folders, you can bring up a window to add particular folders into the build or whatever else. If you want to add project outputs or add files, you can do that here, right? Just browsing to them. I actually like the add files over in this section better. So I will actually use that to manipulate any files that I choose to add, but the two windows are basically equivalent. So I'll talk about that more once I get to Solution Explorer. So I'm not going to add anything here. Okay. Application shortcuts. So if I want to include shortcuts to whatever application I'm installing, I can do that, right? Not a problem. I can build them here. You see the entire section under Configure Target Systems where we can manipulate services, deal with file extension mapping, handle environment variables, all of these kind of things, make registry changes, whatever. Here's the application registry detail that we can manipulate and add, right? So you can choose to do it here, whatever you need to, not a problem, or manipulate it directly over here. And then finally, this is the one that I use. Don't have to, it's just become habit for me. In terms of the interview, whenever you actually install the MSI through ConfigMgr or Intune standalone, you're going to very likely have that be a silent install, should be a silent install. You won't need to ask any questions, right? You won't need to expect user interaction. And so I just turn these off because that makes it run really without asking any questions, okay? All right, and that's really the extent of the wizard. So for the bulk of the rest of the config, I spend time in Solution Explorer. In fact, that's where I go pretty much all the time. Now, if I ever need to pop up the project assistant, I can. So I just close it, I double click it again, it comes right back up, so I can always get back to it, right? So there's good documentation in here too. But let me just start down. Here's the learn more, right? So I can go through that and so on. Getting started. Some good detail here with tasks and such, right? So but this is where I'll start, is in the organize your setup general information. So here basically is some detail that we need to provide to the MSI to tell it how to run. You know, the project name is here for sure. Notice that a few things, setup languages and product codes and things you have generated for you. You can do whatever, just keep generating it if you like or whatever. These are guaranteed to be unique, so really not probably a need to, but you can. The install languages, the install directory, so this is just a reflection again that the install will be any files that you need to unpack or whatever will be stored at the install directory. Every MSI has a database file, and so that database file will also be stored, and you see where it will be stored. Install dir, which is this long path, and then database, right? So install dir, you can think of as a variable. It's defined here. Program files folder is a variable that points to the program files folder on the target system, and then you build it on. Probably you don't want to leave my product name. So I could go rename it. In this case, I will call it video demo. Okay. All users. So how do we want all users to respond? Per machine installation is the default. You can choose either per user or both, right? So all users or the per machine is generally what you will be okay with, and we can leave it alone. Create MSI log. So by default, no. MSI logging is very, very useful. So you can choose to enable MSI logging here, right? And if you don't turn it on, you won't get a chance to see what went wrong in case there was a problem. And then any kind of fast install options and so on. We scroll down, see a few more. So summary information, who the author is, what the subject is, different detail about the install that you're building, any things that you want to do, and add remove programs, whether you want to disable the change button or the remove button, or however, the display icon that you want to use, support phone numbers, all this kind of detail you can put in there. And that's really all the stuff you probably would change, maybe some software tags that you might want to use and such if you need to use that. So that's all on the general tab. If we're building MSIs that will support an upgrade from a previous version, then we can go in here and start to configure that, right? I've never messed with this, had to mess with this when I'm building MSI packages for deployment through Intune or ConfigMgr to MDM managed systems. Maybe I will at some point, but I haven't worked with this much at all, right? Upgrade notifications, how we would put those notifications out to the user and systems or whatever, right? So again, I haven't messed with that too much. Now, under specify application data, here's where we add files. So these are the default areas where we can place things. So this is the equivalent view that I showed you over in Project Assistant. Okay. So this is where my files will unpack. So if you do have files that you need to include to support an installation, you will want to add them and then direct where they will actually be unpacked to. The MSI will basically wrap around all those files, and then you will choose where to unpack them. Probably simplest to unpack them into the same location. It's not always easy that you can do it that way. Maybe the files need to go into specific folders. Whatever. If you want to add folders, you can. So just right click and show the predefined folders. So all of these are predefined pointers, if you will, variables that point to specific locations on the system. Right. So if you want to, you can just add one, like maybe you would want to add the temp folder, right? And then you could manipulate and put uh, files and folders and so on underneath. If I want to go in and add a file, it's just a matter of right click add, and then I can browse to wherever it is that I want to go find the file. Here I'll just add this one. It's a demo that I will use in a minute. Very, very simple batch file, right? But it's here, it's added. And so whenever the install happens, this would get unpacked to program files, tailspintoys.com, and then the rest of the installer. Okay. Any redistributables that need to be in there. So you can check off what your specific version requirements are. It's quite an extensive list if you need to have them. For the script-based installs and PowerShell installs that I've done, I haven't had to worry about this. I can manipulate what I want through the script, right? All right, and then I can go through and configure the target system, add the shortcuts, add the registry changes that I want, right? Any file extension association. Pretty straightforward stuff here. The services that I want to manipulate, add services that I want to change, and so on, right? So again, I haven't spent a lot of time in here because I can control whatever I want generally through a script and just handle it that way. You could choose to opt into building it in the MSI package. That's fine too. But I haven't spent a lot of time in these areas, right? Okay, I can customize the way the dialogues appear and set up. This is basically what I was bypassing when I said the interview earlier, right? This is a little bit more detail you can go into to control how things work, the text in messages, dialogue text that you might want to include and such in the MSI package. Again, I just use the very basic MSI wrapper because my point is to deploy an .exe or a script, which again, an .exe could be PowerShell running a script to get the job done, right? And then finally, under custom actions, that's where the magic happens, right? When the MSI installs, it will do whatever the MSI is built to do. And then at the end, the idea is that you might want to actually leverage the MSI wrapper to hold a script that you then deploy and initiate at the end of install, right? That initiation is done by custom actions. We can set requirements about how the environment should look, but then the custom actions are defined here. Well, there are several sections for custom actions. The first is custom actions during the install of the MSI. Custom actions if we're doing maintenance, repair, whatever. Custom actions during uninstall. So you can put the custom actions wherever it makes sense for you to put them whenever you're running the MSI. You might want to have a custom action that runs during uninstall, as an example, right? And you could do that. Here, what I care about is including a script during install of the MSI, right? So I would only include the script to happen. I suppose you could do it up here, but I've only ever tried to do it either after registering the product or after setup completes, right? There are reasons to choose either one, both work, right? So for here, I'll just say at registration. And here you get an option, either a new .exe, a new VBScript, or a new JavaScript. Well, I'm just going to use new .exe for now. And then I build out the details. So you notice I need to specify the source location of the executable that I'm going to use, and I can either browse for it on the system or say that it's installed with the product. Right? So if I browse on the file system, I can find it. Notice it's only the exe file type, and then go up here, let's say system32, and what I might be interested in finding is CMD.EXE. I might want to launch the command prompt. There it is. So I can go ahead and launch that. Okay. So that's the path to my executable that I'm going to run. Pretty simple. Okay. I will need to include a command line with it. Perhaps, right? You probably don't just want to open the command prompt and do the thing there. You might want to include a batch file that's going to run, right? Or something of that nature. You might want to put a /k to persist the command prompt, or a /c to close the command prompt, or whatever it is, right? So I actually have an example of this in a minute using /k, and I'll show it to you. Here, in script execution, do we want to defer the execution or defer the execution in the system context, right? So it gives you the option to switch context, whether to wait for the action to complete, whether to ignore the exit codes, if there's any conditions that you want to put on the execution, right, of this particular custom action. And that's it, right? Pretty easy to define a custom action. It's just a matter of making sure that your custom action is going to work correctly once we have it deployed. So, obviously testing goes along with this. So I'll show you some examples of this in a minute. And then finally, prepare for release. So this custom action section is crucial to getting things done and installing things like scripts and so on as a part of an MSI package. Again, let's reshape this or refocus this, right? So we've always been able to deploy MSI packages. We can now deploy standard MSI packages through the MDM protocol. The real trick is there may be scripts, there may be PowerShell scripts, VB scripts, there may be custom exes that we want to run. We don't have a way to run those through the MDM channel. The only vehicle we can use is the MSI package. And so by tagging those onto the MSI package and initiating them with a custom action, we can effectively use the MDM protocol to run not only just MSIs, but exes and scripts, right? That's the whole reason we're kind of going through this. Now, when you prepare for release, whenever you build this, if you were to go build this project, you would expect that it would produce an MSI. And that's a fair expectation. That is not true. It would actually build a setup.exe, which when you ran it would extract the MSI and then call it, right? So here, I want to go to releases. And under releases, I can go to one of these three types. Now, I've only really ever used CD-ROM or single image. Pick one probably and stay with it is a suggestion. I use single image now, but you notice with each one, you will have a setup exe tab. Now, that tab took me forever to find. So it's obvious where it is, but it just took me a while to remember it whenever I was working with this initially. The thing here, notice setup launcher. Yes. That and include MSI engine. No. That means that we're going to produce a setup.exe that is a wrapper around the MSI that you're building. We can't use an exe directly through the MDM channel. So what we need is the MSI. So I can choose yes here, and it will actually build both the setup.exe and the MSI. That's not a bad option. Okay. But it's also just easier to build just the MSI and have it because that's what you're going to need. So it's really up to you how you do it. Each one of these has that ability on it. Okay. So, but I just stick with single image and such. And now with that done, I'm ready to actually build my project. Okay, so I'm just going to go build it. This isn't going to do much of anything at all. It's not even going to work. I'm not even going to show it to you, but we will go to the output location here. So that built correctly. And look, all right? So if I open up Explorer here, here's a list of all my projects. So here's the video demo, and I can drill in here a little bit to express, CD-ROM, and then disk images. And this folder contains the output that I need. These are the files that I would need to upload into Intune and then deploy. In this case, it's got the setup.exe, it's got the video demo, MSI, and it's got the program files. So this program files folder was included because I added one file to the deployment. So it has to stage that, and this is that file, the dir.bat. If it were all just embedded in the MSI, all I would get would be the MSI. Right? So in reality, what I really need to deploy this is this MSI and that program files directory. So if I were to load this into Intune or ConfigMgr, my source directory would contain these two items. Doesn't have to contain all three or all five, sorry. These two are the important ones. Okay. But again, that's really not a do anything kind of build, so I'm just going to back up to projects. All right, so let me open a couple of projects now. So I'm just going to discard this and open two. So the first one is just this one. I want to launch the command prompt. Right, here's my solution for it. And this one is basically what I showed you. The custom action and the release info is important. But for this custom action, all I'm doing is launching the command prompt with a /k, and that means persist the command prompt open. Right? I don't need to rebuild this because it's already been built, but let me just run this on my system. Okay, so go into the directory and keep going. All right, so you see I have the setup and I have the launcher. So all I need is this. I'm going to launch this, click next, and install. So at the end of this, when I click finish, I should see a command prompt open, and I do. Now notice that the MSI is still running in the background, right? So if I do what comes naturally and just close this, I'm going to get an error. Why did I get that error? Because I exited the command prompt in an unnatural way, in a way that generated other than an exit code 0, right? And so if I do this again and exit it naturally, you're going to find out that this, in fact, installs correctly, doesn't give an error at all. So here, let me just type in exit, and it closes, no problem at all, because when I exit it, that's a command that command prompt knows is normal, and it's not just being shut down, right? So do you have a great deal of interest in launching the command prompt and keeping it around? Probably not, but just to give you an example of making sure or knowing how to do that, right? There's no source files included here. It's just actually running a file that's already on the machine, right? So just to pull that back up, it's just running an existing file that's on the machine, right? Let me pull another one up. So if I pull up this one where I want to launch a PowerShell script, okay, again, this is just running a process that is already, on the machine. It's just calling PowerShell.exe. So let's go to my custom action here, and notice what we're doing, right? So here, all I'm doing is calling PowerShell.exe in the path where it is, specifying the bypass on these are the command line options, and then the command could be a PowerShell script, or it could be a small script that's embedded on the command line, whichever one works for you, right? You could take a very long script and put it inside the brackets and have a very long command line. It should work. Okay, so whichever one is of interest to you. But and everything else is really the same here. Let me show you this one actually executing and such. So if I'll go to projects here and PS1, keep drilling in. Okay, so whenever I run this, it should actually generate a file, dir.text is what it should. Hopefully it will. So I'll run this here, install, off it goes, and notice it opened the window, take it for a second, and there's the dir.text. So that worked. So now all of a sudden we've seen we can run exes, no problem, but we can also run PowerShell scripts because the PowerShell is an exe. I can run PowerShell scripts as well. If you looked up here, let's go back to Files. You would see, oops, sorry, not Files, Custom Actions. Back to custom action. If I open up another custom action, there is no ability to specify to run a PowerShell script. That's okay. PowerShell's an exe. We can call it by we can launch the script by calling the PowerShell.exe and passing it in, so we have the ability to run PowerShell scripts as well, right? So anyway, the examples here, admittedly, are very basic and such, and that's not a problem. I did this. I walked through this with the intention of just demonstrating how you would leverage this kind of thing. It will be something that you'll want to spend some time with, get familiar with, certainly take it to the next level that I did not do, and install it to or install it through Intune or ConfigMgr, right? But that's the end here. I just wanted to get that out there for any that are needing to do that, and we will wrap the session here and see you next time.